Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to be with you this morning. We're very fortunate to have with us Gretchen Bickett this morning. Gretchen is a sound therapist and also has done so many different qualifications. Gretchen, I was reading all of the different courses and areas that you've worked in. They're overwhelming. There's Reiki, there's grief support, there's pet loss. Some of the courses that you have done and the qualifications you hold are just amazing. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you've got so many strings to your bow. I would just love to hear more about all of the things that you're doing. And particularly today, we're going to be talking about pet loss. I think everybody here would agree that unless you have really loved an animal and lost an animal, you would not understand the intensity of pet loss. And it's something that society doesn't really acknowledge. People just sort of say, oh, get another one. They don't understand what it actually means. So over to you, Gretchen, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself. And of course, we want to know all about what you're going to be doing at Soul Summit.
Thank you so much, Wendy and Karen, for having me here today to talk about a lot of the things that I'm very passionate about. And, you know, when you talk about my different certifications and et cetera, they all really work together to support palliative care and healing and transformation for both people and animals. For instance, like my death doula training that I took is really for supporting people going through that process of animals. But just a little bit about how I got to where I am today. Started with, I've always been very interested in yoga and meditation and healing modalities, aromatherapy, etc. Louise Hay, and not to age myself, but I will, started yoga with Lilius Folan on PBS many years ago. And, you know, Louise Hay, you know, 30 years ago or so when she came out was just, I thought that was remarkable. But I've always been really guided towards working with animals. My dad was an agricultural engineer, so I grew up around animals as a child, and we've also been a very musical family. So the sound and the animals just really blended and, you know, grew where I am today. But what really made the change was my dog Ernie. And, you know, when you talk about my different certifications and et cetera, they all really work together to support palliative care and healing and transformation for both people and animals. For instance, like my death doula training that I took is really for supporting people going through that process of animals. But just a little bit about how I got to where I am today. Started with, I've always been very interested in yoga and meditation and healing modalities, aromatherapy, etc. Louise Hay, and not to age myself, but I will, started yoga with Lilius Folan on PBS many years ago. And, you know, Louise Hay, you know, 30 years ago or so when she came out was just, I thought that was remarkable. But I've always been really guided towards working with animals. My dad was an agricultural engineer, so I grew up around animals as a child, and we've also been a very musical family. So the sound and the animals just really blended and, you know, grew where I am today. But what really made the change was my dog Ernie. It was a dog that I had for about 14, 15 years. It was my first adult dog. And I like to say he was a person that wore fur and had 4 legs and spoke in a different language. But we were very, very connected. And even though I grew up with animals and loved them very deeply, I'd had cats that I loved very deeply and went through grief and loss with them, there was something different about this dog. And really, pushed me towards getting my certification in pet loss and bereavement, and also expanded my belief in that love never dies. And I'd always been a believer. I grew up Catholic, we believe in an afterlife, we believe in the saints, all of these beautiful energies and angels and all of that. But when my dog sent signs from the afterlife that other people witnessed along with me, it blew my mind. And I realized that maybe all along I hadn't really completely believed, because here's my dog doing this crazy stuff. I still really can't explain what happened, but I can share that really quickly if you want. I'll throw that in. The miraculous, crazy sign he sent, and some people are aware of it, but many of you may not be. My dog had lymphoma. So we went through this process together, and I experienced anticipatory grief. I learned what that was. I didn't know what it was. Finally found a label for it, which was helpful for me. But after he died, I knew when he was going to die. The day that, I knew he was going through all of the signs, and he was in hospice. I didn't know what that was for animals, but that's what I decided we were doing. And so I knew he was going to die that day. I actually left work and came home. And I had, after he died, and there's a lot of stories, but I just want to keep this short for now, and I can throw in more later. But after he died, I had called my 2 friends to come over so that we could just sit with him, kind of like a wake, what you would do with people. You sit, you talk, you share stories, and you just sort of process that shock or that energy that happens when somebody passes, which for me was just like tremendously beautiful. And so my friends came over, we were sitting around, we were chatting, we're on the floor, Ernie's body is laid out. And before he had died, I had asked him to send me the signs in the form of tennis balls. And I said, but it's got to be something I cannot second guess, because I am what I would like to call an open-minded skeptic. So I question things often and, wonder about them, analyze them. Was that real? Was that my mind? Was that the wind? Whatever. So I said, it has to be unmistakable, no second guessing. And as we were sitting there, a tennis ball rolled across the floor on my carpet, not wooden floor. And I was like, wait, what? And it wasn't just one, a second one came rolling behind it. And there's 2 other people there. So the 3 of us are like, what the what? And I'm like, did you do that? And they're like, no, everyone's hands go up, like, not me, and even to this day, I sit in amazement when I think about that, because I had asked him, I can't second guess this. So he sends not 1, but 2 tennis balls. There's not 1 other witness, but 2 other witnesses. And this sign from him was just the first of so many that happened and still continue to happen. Ernie died 6 years ago, and just about 3 months ago, I was invited to do a radio show to talk about Ernie and grief and pet loss. And I'm like, six years pass, and you are still like helping people. And he comes up in readings, and people will say, who's this dog? Suzanne Wilson knows him now. It's like they're buddies, because he keeps showing up for Suzanne Wilson. And, most recently when I was in Utah at a conference, he showed up at a huge gallery reading. She's the woman's like, who is this dog? She's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, I did a talk on my dog and da-da. And she's like, no, it's somebody who has like his stuff in their suitcase, like his collar. And I'm like, yeah, I have his collar and his tags in my suitcase sitting right there. And he just continues to blow me away and guide me on my path and teach me so much about love and life and service to others, as well as helping me personally go through a number of losses that occurred back to back after he died. So, after he died, I decided, to work on getting my certification for pet loss, and that happened a couple of years later. And while I was getting my certificate, finalizing this, my mom was in ICU and she died, and that was in 2015. And then a few months later, my other dog, Charlotte, died. And then a year later, my dad died. And so it just like kept happening. And while what I went through with Ernie did not remove the pain in any way, shape, or form, it opened my eyes to this process of what we go through as human beings on earth in the pain and the loss, and that every single loss for me was completely and totally different in how I felt about it and how I processed it and what it brought up for me and what I needed to do to get through it. And so that in turn helped me serve other people, because this reminder that grief is such, no one person will experience grief in the same exact way. And to have this giant like trunk full of resources and things to try or to explore, that's what I kept learning and putting more tools in my toolbox, our pain away, but that's just really not the case. I think what the key is learning about all sorts of different ways that fit you and your truth, your belief. Because, what I found through all of these different deaths is, even though we as a culture appear to be expanding and opening up to talking and having these conversations, and, death posts are all over Facebook now, there still really is this underlying culture of wanting to rationalize and push away and make it all better, instead of just saying, you know what, I acknowledge your feelings and I'm here and I hold space in whatever way, shape, or form, and offering, if somebody wants something offered, what are some tools to help soften your journey, but not remove it, not put it in a pretty little box with a bow on the shelf and get on with your life. Because I'm going to tell you what, that grief, that pain, that trauma, whatever it was, is going to make itself known in ways that are unplanned for us, and that happened to me when I was like, no, not dealing with this. It was after we inherited my mother's dog, Samson. He got degenerative myelopathy, and it was a really difficult process moving through that, watching him become debilitated, but also trying to be in the present moment. And when he died, it ripped off scabs, scab rip. And I'm like, nope, just not going to deal. And I had gotten a telephone call from like Best Buy or some credit card or something. And I ended up like unloading on this poor operator on the phone, which he did apologize for. But I was like, holy cow, Gretchen, where's all this emotion and anger coming from? And it was like, oh, I know exactly where it's coming from. It was that pretty little box I decided to stuff all my crap in and not acknowledge and process. And so it was a reminder for me to take that time and reach out and, allow those feelings to come up and be felt and acknowledged and validated. in a way that, I had more, control of, rather than pushing it down and away. So when we talk specifically about like animal loss and pet loss, it's something that's completely different from all of our other losses, I feel. And of course, all of our losses are very individual. But, with an animal, often they're with us more often than our spouse or our partner or our kids, right? And if we work at home, then they're there like 24/7, always there, always there. So they become a big part of our routine. They come, if it's just you and the dog or the cat or the bird or whatever, they often, we have conversations, at least I did. So we would talk, we would chat, we had walks, we had routines, we had snuggle time, no judgment. I'm gonna eat this donut, who cares, you'll probably give me some, eat more. Whoop, whoop. I don't feel like brushing my hair, don't care, look at my hair. And so you have this like thing, this being that's there to, it's like this living stuffed animal that loves you no matter what you do. And we don't really get a lot of that in our lives these days, right? And so when we lose that, it's just, I think it takes us by surprise. I think that's the other thing, is I think there's like shock, like, holy cow. I remember my mom, when she lost one of her dogs, calling me and saying, this feels worse than when I lost Cece. And my Aunt Cece was her older sister. And she was like, I'm not sure how I feel about that right now. And I'm like, there's no judgment. Just feel however you feel about it. And, your dog was there. Eris was there 24/7 with you, like, and they wait, they wait for your words, and they're like, yeah, I get it. Oh, you are the smartest person ever, and it's just like, thank you, dog. And so I think that too is something that is hard for us, because if it's our first loss of an animal, it's a little shocking to find out how deep that connection really is, right? And then of course, the people that surround us, our support system, sometimes isn't as supportive as we'd like them to be, for a couple of things. One, they may not have ever lost an animal, so they may not understand that pain. Two, people who love us often don't want to know that we're in pain. So they want to push it away and rationalize it, because our pain means pain for them, right? And this whole reminder of like, oh my God, they're hurting. I don't want them to hurt, because now I hurt. So just don't hurt, and then I won't hurt. And, to learn to hold space for others is hard sometimes, learning that boundary, how I can hold space for your pain. It doesn't necessarily mean that I also have to fall into that. So, when we lose an animal, really looking for that group and those people who, we're like-minded. And it's the same way when in our life, when we lose a husband or a wife or a partner or whatever, or a child, finding those people that are in the like-minded space, really helpful. So when we lose a dog or a cat or another animal, finding people that are in that like-minded space can be very beneficial for us. So I don't want to spend the whole time just talking on and on. I really would love to make this interactive or take questions. I am familiar with a number of modalities that I recommend in people's life. It looks like there is a question. Oh, Brian. Oh my gosh, my heart totally goes out to you. Brian has said he had to put his dog to sleep last Saturday, and not a word from friends about it. Wow. Brian, can we unmute Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge what you had said about how with pet loss, people don't really understand that they're family members. And I do work from home. My dog was with me 24/7 and for 14 and a half years. So she's a huge part of your life. So when a person passes away, everybody says, "Oh, that's terrible," and they come around. You get sympathy cards and you get support, and but when it's a dog, it's like you said, it's just a dog and another one.
Right. Right. Well, so how are you doing as far as like, I guess you're here, which is a perfect place to be with other like-minded people.
I
Do you
wanted to
have
tell you
any
the story,
support?
Gretchen. This is incredible. Okay, so it was last Saturday that we had to put Zoe to sleep, and I've been trying to reach Suzanne Wilson because of Wendy and Victor had me on this meeting a couple of weeks ago. So I was going to tell Suzanne about the book I had written and stuff like that. So anyway, I saw Suzanne was going to be on last Sunday. We had to put our dog to sleep on Saturday. So while we're in the room putting her to sleep, my daughter says that she sees my other daughter in the corner of the room because my daughter passed away 4 years ago. So my older daughter says, I saw Shayna in the room as Zoe was crossing. And I had actually prayed for a shared crossing experience. I was hoping to see my daughter come to take Zoe away. So Kayla tells us this, and then I see Suzanne Wilson is going to be on the meeting last week. So I get on the meeting and I tell Suzanne the story. And before I even told her that, she said, "Did you feel your dog's spirit leave? Did you see her leave?" And I said, "Well, I didn't see her, but I felt her. I felt her like she passed through me." And Suzanne said that exact same thing. And she said, "Shayna tells me that she was in the corner of the room when it happened," which validated what my other daughter had told me. So it was an amazing experience. And then I heard you and Suzanne Giesman's show. You were just on like last week. And then I saw you were going to be here today. So it's just all this one huge synchronicity.
Yeah, it's pretty magical how those things happen, Brian, and I don't believe in coincidences. And I feel like our animals, they get together and they, I have some crazy stories about things that like, it's like, that was so contrived. How did that even happen?
Yeah.
And it's like, so I calculate statistically, okay, and it's like, no, impossible. Right? And so that's just it. You're so meant to be here and to find this space and to connect with Suzanne. And my heart really goes out to you as you
Well,
go
thanks.
through.
I wanted to share that with you, and I want to share with everybody because, like I said, it was hard for me to put into words how convoluted the whole thing was and how all these things had to line up. And you being on Suzanne's show last week, and then I saw you were going to be on here today. And me trying to reach out to Suzanne Wilson, I saw she was going to be on, so that's why I got on to get a message to her. And then she gives me a message about Shayna being in the room, which is the same message my other daughter had given me. So it's crazy.
Well, I'm going to say it's Ernie.
Yeah,
My backwards, right?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Oh, okay, good. Well, when he was sick, I had a license plate made for him. And I want to share something else. So I brought this as well. I don't know if you can see it. It's a picture of Ernie. Probably can't see it. It's reflecting. Oh, there we go.
That's it.
Okay. So this picture was on my desk at work. I used to work in the zoo field for like 20 some years. And his picture was on one of my desks. And after he died, I was staring at his picture, and I noticed that there was a little fortune that was like laid on top of I don't know about you, but I always collect the fortunes. I can't like throw them away. I don't know, some sort of superstition. Got to keep it. Anyway, I look, and right next to his picture, I'm going to read it. It says, "You will touch the hearts of many." And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, and I taped it to his picture. And it's like the truth. I cannot believe how this dog has like changed my life and inspired others. And he continues to make magic happen, like with Brian. Brian, I know from going to his talks and webinars, and I took a class with Brian, I don't know, 2 years ago. It's a spirituality class you did with Terry.
With Terry,
and
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so and then when I saw him like a week ago, I was like, what right, small world. This is crazy. How are you here? And now it's because our dogs are conspiring. So
Yeah, it's crazy.
anyway, that's beautiful. Okay, I'm going to look in the chat. All right. Is there anyone else who wants to ask questions, or, I'd love for you guys to, share your stories of animal stuff. You're obviously here because you're all animal lovers. Okay, we've got hands. So Sharon.
Yes. What about the guilt I feel over a loss of my dog, that I could have helped her. And that I'm like, think she's over there going, wow, why didn't you do that? Overwhelming
Right.
guilt.
So
I hope she's forgiven me. But I just wonder if a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people go through that with humans too, their loved ones. I could have did that, but this one dog of mine, wow, it just still, and it's been many years. That is there like a way to get over that?
Yeah, Sharon, absolutely. I think that a lot of our guilt is this and I think that sometimes what happens over time, at least for me, is the story starts to almost like creates this situation or scenario that really wasn't even part of it. With guilt, and I'd love for anyone, Craig or Brian, you guys to step in on this, but being able to clarify exactly what your expectation was. And you said that your dog wasn't suffering, you weren't able to do enough. Well, perhaps you truly weren't able to do enough, and this is really about allowing a process of forgiveness for yourself. Often when we're feeling other feelings, guilt and ruminating over those feelings, they're really a distraction from going deep and allowing the feeling of pain to just really rise up. So we ruminate, we think, we beat ourselves up, we don't forgive, because it keeps the mind busy on these other things that still don't feel good, but they keep us away from allowing the process of the pain and acceptance and forgiving ourselves for just being human. And go ahead, Pam.
I was going to say, guilt is, everybody feels guilty, Sharon.
Absolutely.
Everybody thinks they either didn't do enough, did it too late. It's just really normal. The best quote I ever heard was, "The guilt is just love that has nowhere to go."
Oh.
The other thing is, we kind of hang on to them by hanging on to the guilt.
True.
The guilt you can really feel, and it's tangible, and it connects us to them in our minds. And it's really somewhat we have to learn to let go of it and forgive ourselves. And we didn't really do anything wrong to begin with. Just
very true. Very true. Sharon, I can send you, if you find my email, I can send you some questions, some things to dialogue, to think about with yourself, to allow you to go a little bit deeper into that process. So just shoot me an email. You'll find it on there. Craig, did you want to add anything in with guilt and grief?
Yeah, if there's anything that we've learned over and over again, it's that they are wishing for us to realize that they're just fine. They would rather that you wouldn't feel that kind of guilt, that you wouldn't feel the way you do. They receive all that. In other words, the depth of your feeling is a love for them, and they receive all of that, and they don't feel that you have done anything wrong, and they just wish that you would go on and understand that and live a happy life. So their greatest desire is for you to feel that. And they know what you have wanted to have happen, what you wish to have happen, and they're feeling that, they're getting that message, and they just want you to go on because they're concerned about you more than they are about whatever happened in the past.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, that was wonderful. And it reminded me of back to Ernie when he was in the process of dying and letting go. And I had an animal communicator that I worked with. And I was just saying, the guilt. And she said, you know, he is just like, what? Let it go. You know, I'm beginning to feel this freedom and expansion and all of the love that you gave me. You could never have done anything less or anything more. It all was just perfect. And for me, it's just really allowing that to flow through my body, and then also a reminder of all of those times where I was really so hard on myself and didn't see where I was giving and where I was open. The fact that you are sitting here, even having that guilt, you know, as Pam said as well, is it was the love having nowhere to go, is it just shows me how much love you had. So it's really a process, Sharon, and I commend you for your courage of speaking up. And I'd love to share some things with you. I'll send by email to help support you as you move through that. Thank you. Yes, Brian, guilt is universal, absolutely. Did anybody else want to share an experience that they may have had with guilt and the loss of their animals and how they moved through that? All right, so do any of you guys have any other questions about like alternative modalities for moving through grief or palliative hospice care, anything like that? Those are all, you know, things that I work with when it comes to working with animals and animal loss. So I'm just gonna like talk a little bit about some alternative healing modalities that I have used that I find are immensely helpful, and one would be flower essences. So who here is familiar with and has used flower essences before? Just raise your hand. Okay, I absolutely love them. I use them with my clients. I use them with animals all of the time. And their Star of Bethlehem is one that I highly recommend for moving through grief. And Sharon, I can't think off the top of my head, but there are some really lovely flower essences that are wonderful for helping to release the energetics of guilt. And what I really love about flower essences is they're not like a drug. They don't work. They're not immediate. What I like to think of them as is they offer a softening as well as an opening to the wisdom that can come from moving through emotion or trauma or really difficult events, so that we can find an evolution from that as we go through it. And we're not just pushing that away or rationalizing our trauma or our pain. They allow us to actually be present with it and be able to manage the emotions better. Let's see. So Karen is saying, I think as a society, it's not healthy to think of getting over grief. Sometimes we have to leave room in our heart for grief to stay. That's okay too. Getting over is such an unrealistic finality. It does not reflect what the truth is. We can choose to move the pain to a comfort level that is okay for us. That's really very beautiful, Karen. I love what you have said. So, you know, and a little bit more on that. I really feel like what's an important thing to get across for grief, no matter if it's, you know, with your animals or, you know, whatever the loss is for you, that whatever you're feeling is, it's normal and okay. And I think that at times we end up getting stuck because there is this culture of getting over it, or a time frame that is, you're supposed to get over it. You know, oh, it's been 5 years. Why aren't you over it? It's been a month. Why aren't you over it? And I don't feel like, I don't believe that time heals all wounds. I honestly do not believe that at all. I believe that time softens the blow. It makes it a bit more gentle for us. I don't know that, like Karen said, we ever really get over it. I think we learn to just manage it. Yes. Thank you, Karen. I super appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's all about just being able to move through. I don't necessarily think that there's like this point we reach, you know, there's not like this destination that we're going to hit and it's like, oh, there I am. But being able to, you know, sometimes it can be, grief can be paralyzing. And so allowing ourselves to be able to move through and process so that we can be back into our lives, right? And to be a participant again, you know, as we move through it. That's where I think it's really important that we find these ways to process these emotions. So
Yeah,
is
and
there
there's a real
anyone else
difference.
who wants to add? Hand raised,
Yeah,
Pam.
Gretchen.
Oh, Craig, go ahead.
There's a real difference between the grief and the guilt. And grief is something that'll change, it'll evolve, it'll be different. It's still grief, it'll still be there. But the guilt is different because the guilt usually means it's a coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah.
And it means going back to whatever the incidents were, whatever the passing was, whatever. It's going back to that, and in a way, it's like feeling like, well, I could go back and I could change everything, and they'd still be here.
Right.
And that's a part of it subliminally. That's a part of it in our thinking and our feeling. And we need to let go of that. Let go of the coulda, woulda, shoulda. And not go back and relive it, and not go back and go over it over and over again. The grief is still there. The desire to have them with us on the physical plane, even though we know we're going to reunite with them. But to not go back to the coulda, woulda, shoulda and go over and over again what it is that could have happened, because there's a subliminal desire that that's going to change things, and it's not. Right. So we need to let that go and carry on with our love and carry on with our desire to have them with us that we can have, and then we can feel the grief fully, allow ourselves to go into the full grief, and in episodes when we're racked with sobs about it, and allow ourselves to have that, but not to go back to the coulda, woulda, shoulda, because it's not going to do any good. It won't bring them back. All you're doing is digging a deep hole for yourself.
Thank you, Craig. That is a really important distinction. And, you know, as I had mentioned earlier, oftentimes when we're stuck in that ruminating, that woulda, coulda, shoulda, da, 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 it just becomes stagnation. It pulls us away from really processing the pain of grief. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up and made a clarification from that. Pam, did you have a question?
Oh, I had two of them. Dr. Wallace Seif, who wrote the first book on pet loss grief, as Gretchen knows, said to grieve is natural. To stay in grief, however, is optional. And you're right. For me, it was the case of either grief was running me or I was running me. And eventually I just got tired of it and went, you know, I can't go on like this. There's just no way. So I think eventually you finally can reach the point or you can just allow it to keep total control. So I think you just have to, somewhere along the line, once the initial pain has passed and you're starting to make improvements, you're right, Gretchen, you just have to let go of it. Slowly but surely, but let it go.
I agree. I agree. Barbara.
I think celebrating the life of the animal is important too. I was just thinking about the fact that in my family, although it's been 70 years, 70, since the passing of my sister's favorite dog, Mitzi, Collie Shepherd, we celebrate Mitzi's birthday every year.
I love that. You know, Barbara, I'm really glad that you brought that up because ceremony and ritual, memorial, it plays such a big part in moving through healing and allowing those things to be processed. And, you know, I'm hoping our culture will continue to kind of move and embrace how other cultures go through this, you know, this lamenting, the singing, the wailing, the sharing, the being together in community and really having the support to hold you up is just so absolutely beautiful. And for me, ceremony and ritual, I find it to be such a gift when it comes to working through our grief and feeling supported. So I'm glad that you brought that up, and I love the yearly birthday reminder. That's just awesome. So Brian, did you have something that you wanted to share?
No, but earlier you asked about the guilt, and I wanted to address that with Sharon because I think it's really, having gone through this just literally 7 days ago with my dog. She was 14, and you know, I knew that it was coming. Obviously, she was 14 years old, but she was always in really good health. But you always have to decide, okay, well, how long are we going to do this? How long am I going to keep her around? And that last week or so, like, she would be in her room, with like the mud room where she would stay during the day, and she couldn't even come out. She couldn't go downstairs in the basement where she used to hang out with my wife, you know, during the day. And I would actually avoid walking by the room because I would think she's just gonna look at me and say, "How long are we going to do this?" But still, when you take her in, we took her in, and they gave her a treat at the vet, and she jumped up and she grabbed the treat. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe today's not the day. Maybe she could make it another, you know, week or a month or 6 months or whatever. So my point is, whatever time you decide to make that decision, it's never going to feel like the right time. You're going to feel like either I waited too late or I did it too soon. And we just have to accept, as human beings, we can only do so much. And we just have to accept we did the best we could and let that part of it go.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, animal euthanasia that's a toughie, and I had to go through that twice. Once with a cat many years ago, and then most recently with my mom's dog that we inherited. And that was huge. And we actually made the appointment and canceled it 3 times. Which is perfectly okay. I remember when we canceled, it was like, oh, but, and I said, I don't really care what she thinks. This is what we're doing. And, you know, and we talked with her later. She's like, oh, don't even worry about it. Everybody does that. And it's perfectly fine. And, you know, and again, I was like, this is our decision. We'll make when we make it. But it was, you know, in looking back, I mean, I thank Samson for giving me this gift of being able to completely empathize with people who have to go through this. And with Samson, he had what's called degenerative myelopathy. So it's like ALS or MF in people. So he's totally, it's like half his body is all like, whoop, whoop, and then half his body is not. And he weighed almost 90 pounds. So, you know, it was a challenge dealing with them, but we did everything that we could in our power. But even then, there's that that little puppet talking to you, you know, that you make peace with. You make peace with. And you know that the fact that you're questioning it is indicative of the deep love, and that whatever you're doing from a space of deep love, right? So it's that remembrance, reminding ourselves of that in the process. Yes, Kim.
I had a very similar thing to Brian. I had to put down my 17-year-old Jack Russell this year, and I definitely left it too long. He was alive several months for us. He had dementia, which, I mean, people get, but you don't hear people talk about it with animals. So it was actually, I think, a great release for him when he went. And we did the whole at the vet thing too, made much worse by comments of people in the waiting room, was along the lines of, I should have had it done at home, which I didn't know I could do. And another lady said, are you sure it's not pain? So there's an incredible lack of understanding. And so there was all this guilt being put on me. And I'm like, of course it's not pain. I wouldn't be doing this if, you know, it was something like pain. It's not like he hasn't been to the vet. But what I wanted to say is, and what nobody's mentioned here from a shamanic point of view, if you're talking past humans or past animals who are deceased, the easiest way for anything that's gone through the veil to reach you is when you're dreaming, because you're in an altered dream state. So I thought I'd just say that that dog has shown up several times, but actually last week he showed up in my dreams dancing the happy, what I call a happy dance. He was just so happy. And it was like, I need to go outside, which was, of course, becoming an issue with the dementia. It was toileting. And so it was like, I need to go outside in this dream. And I literally got up and walked him out to the back door and opened the door, and he just danced out and off he was gone. So what no one's mentioning, and what really helps with grief, is if you acknowledge that dream visits are real visits. That's the energy of that being coming to visit you. And that's all I wanted to add.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's something that I've worked on quite often. Suzanne Wilson will talk about dream visits, and I share with my clients that have grief. I'm like, set up a dream date, right? And, you know, keep a journal so you can scratch things down when you're like not awake quite yet, and before the dream fades away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a perfect one, Kim. I love that. And I really love that, the happy dance that, what was your dog's name?
Malcolm.
Malcolm. I love that Malcolm came doing a happy dance. Before Ernie died, I had, you know, he was on the floor and I could tell he was coming, going. And I had stepped out and I was in the bathroom and I was just washing my hands. And all of a sudden, I just heard in my head, I'm free. I'm in the land where all there is love. And I was like, wait, what? And I ran to the living room, and sure enough, he was in the last stages. You know, I'm sure he had already gone, but it was, I couldn't even contain myself. This energy of pure freedom and peace and love. And, you know, it was like, I wanted to just like put all of that feeling in a bottle, because it was not too much longer that all of a sudden it was like, and here we are, right? And, you know, the grief came and all of that needed to be processed, and, you know, my mind not really being my friend. But that feeling, that happy dance, that joy, I felt it when my mom died. It was like, holy cow. And it was like, please, nobody talk to me for right now, because right now I'm in the space of the pure bliss that is being enjoyed by her spirit. And, you know, I know that soon enough, my earthly human is going to have to do its earthly human processing. But for right now, I just want to be in that, you know, you can't even describe the expansiveness of that feeling. right? I think you know what I'm like referencing here. Just super beautiful and wonderful. And I try and like go back into that through meditation to remember that I too can feel an expansiveness of being even on earth. I mean, obviously I can't drive a car in that state or do business, but I can blend back there just for a big let go, a big sigh kind of thing. So the Soul Summit in Scottsdale this September, I will be talking about the ancient science of sound and how we can use it for transformations and healing and raising our consciousness and vibration. And so I'll just share a bit of the history of sound and how it's been used through the ages in ceremony and in different culture, and then teach take-home tools through, you know, toning or singing or vowels or humming or whatever that can be easily put into practice to help us just process and move through emotions or whatever as we open up and expand and allow ourselves to be more present, therefore raising our vibration and our consciousness. So, and I'm sitting here at my office, so I've got my gong here, but I'll be playing my gong. I'll have my gongs there and other various vibrational instruments. So we'll finish with a beautiful vibrational meditation to either connect with loved ones or just feel that expansive feeling, being perfectly present in this moment. Because when we are perfectly present here now and we're not being pulled to the past, pulled to the future, you know, this is like this, when we're present, it's still and we're here. And there's so much that we can just be here now with, right? And be present for others and hold space. So that's a little bit about what I'll be doing at the Soul Summit. I'm super excited about it. Oh, and it'll be on a full moon, of course. So it's a perfect time to move into the full moon energies and let go and prepare you for the rest of the conference to come so that you're open and receptive to bring in whatever it is that you need to bring in for your very individual highest and greatest good.
Absolutely. Gretchen, I really appreciate this. And for me personally, the timing was impeccable. I think this is very helpful for people. You know, as I said, people don't really understand, a lot of people don't understand pet grief. So this is very beneficial.
What a message that is. And just keep giving it to people. People have got to hear that. It's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so glad.
Gretchen, are you thinking of doing an ongoing group for people?
Oh, yes. Yeah, so I'll be restarting my online Zoom group for animal loss and just to talk about grief and share stories, or, you know, even if it's anticipatory grief, talk a little bit about ideas for ceremony and ritual. You know, I found, like with Samson, when we were going to euthanize him, you know, I was able to plan, you know, a ceremony for my sister and I to really honor this, you know, using flower essences and etc. So it's really a group to explore all those aspects about animals and the afterlife. You know, what I would really love is to have people let me know times that are good. I know that we're working with a global group here. And so I'd love to be able to, you know, obviously can't make everyone happy. We never can make everyone happy. But to accommodate as many people as I can that are interested in participating in the group.